Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this session in the Sullam Munawraq of Al-Imam Al-Akhdari in Mantiq, and we pray that Allah bless us and with tawfiq and hidayah, that we are able to understand the subject, and may Allah make this lesson a reason where we attain His pleasure, and may Allah forgive any our sins and bless us in husnul khatimah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. So inshallah, first of all, if there are those who are following a lesson today, there is a slight delay in this lesson due to some commitments. So inshallah ta'ala, before we continue in our lesson, and we do not have much time today, let me just revise some few things about what we mentioned last week. Basically, we are speaking about ad-dalala, the signification, the chapter of signification. And the author mentioned faslun fi anwa' ad-dalalati al-wad'iyyah. The author speaks about the formulative signification, because in Mantiq, as what I mentioned last week, what is important in logic is formulative signification. And we mentioned there are two other types of signification. We have the rational signification, dalala aqliya, and we have the natural signification, that is dalala tab'iyya. These are the three forms of signification. So one, we have any rational signification, natural signification, and we have any formulative signification. And they are divided into two parts, and we have the verbal and the non-verbal. So a non-verbal is like, for example, the knocking of the door, and we understand that someone is outside. When we see smoke, we understand there is fire. When there is blackness in the sky, the sign that is going into rain. All these are non-verbal signification. Likewise, pertaining to hand signals, even in formulative signification is divided into verbal and non-verbal. So we have hand signals, for example, this is a kind of formulative signification, but it is non-verbal. For example, this sign shows that it is good, and this sign shows that it is bad. This is a kind of formulative signification, and we give some examples. Likewise, when we look at signs, when we look at the color red, it is a signal for us to stop. Color green is signal for us to move. Amber is between what you call it, to slow down, for example. So this is types of formulative signification, and there are many. If we want to speak about examples, and we are living in the world where it is full of what you call it, signs and significations, that's what we mentioned in Mantiq. And in every profession, there are terminologies, and sets of terminologies and words that indicates certain meanings and so on. So the knowledge of Mantiq has pay attention to this, the meanings behind these words, and specifically it focuses on the verbal side of signification. So the knowledge of Mantiq, it is not important. The Manatiq or scholars in Mantiq, and they do not see non-verbal significations as something that is important in Mantiq. But what is most important in Mantiq, and the thing that the scholars in Mantiq concentrate in this particular subject, is the verbal, formulative signification. They are not really looking into the rational type of signification. It is more into the knowledge of aqidah, when it comes into rational signification and rational thought and so on. And when it comes into the tab'iyya, dalala tab'iyya, this is in science. But when it comes into logic, they are more focuses on dalala wad'iyya. This is where Al-Imam Al-Akhdari mentioned in his Sullam, he said faslun fi anwa' ad-dalalati al-wad'iyya. Specifically, he is speaking about a type of signification that is called wad'iyya, which is translated as formulative. Formulative meaning something any that is placed any upon any meanings any on certain terminologies or certain any words any that are used. So this is where the knowledge of Mantiq any focuses on. So this is called, as what we mentioned, the verbal formulative signification. So let us any go back any to our notes. So this basically, when we speak any about the lafzi, the verbal any aspect, we have the aqliya, tab'iyya, and then we have any the wad'iyya. All this any I mentioned in last week. Then the formulative signification is the main part where the scholars of Mantiq any focuses. And then we spoke any about dalala mutabaqa last week, dalala tadammuniyya, and dalala iltizamiyya. So there are three types any of what you call it signification, any verbal any signification. So we have number one, any mutabaqa any where a word any explain any the complete any meaning any of the essence, like the word al-insan, yani this is dalala mutabaqa, yani when we say al-insan, it means a human being, and human being any meaning any the whole any of human being. Then we have any dalala tadammuniyya, yani a partial any signification, and the example yani when we say, for example, al-insan is a being, al-insan yani a being. Now this is any a partial meaning any of insan, that it is any a being, but the correct any definition of insan is hayawanun natiq. Al-insan is hayawanun natiq. Yani if you say insan any is just any a being, there are many any beings any out there. So it is a partial any meaning any of insan. And then we have the dalala iltizam. Dalala any iltizam, that's what any we mentioned, something any that is deduced any by the mind, a constant any indication. Dalala iltizam any is a type any of constant indication. A simple any example any will be the word blindness and association any to sight. So the moment any we say someone any is blind, then we understand that he has no sight. Or when we say someone any sees, then we know that he is not blind. So this is something that constantly is struck into our mind, that we can deduce from this relationship of any the meaning. So I walk any along the house, and it means any I walk any along the street that leads any to the house. So it is something any that we can deduce by the certain meanings any of certain words. So this is called dalala iltizam, associative any significance. So basically, just need to recap what we mentioned. We spoke any about dalala wad'iyya, dalala aqliya, dalala tab'iyya. These are the three types of significations, and scholars of Mantiq any focuses on dalala wad'iyya, a formulative any form of signification. And then under the formulative any signification, and we have the two types, and we have the verbal and we have the non-verbal. And the scholars in Mantiq any they focuses any on the verbal aspect any of formulative significance. So this is anywhere the meaning any of words and the usage any of words play a part any in the importance any of learning logic, and where the subject any focuses on. And then it also speaks any after that, and we spoke any about these three types any of signification. Sometimes any we mean a particular word, any we mean the whole essence. Sometimes any we mean a partial meaning. Sometimes any it is something that is associative. This is any basically what is mutabaqa, what is tadammuniyya, and what is iltizamiyya. Aywa. So now any after any we have understood any the meaning of dalala wad'iyya, dalala mutabaqa, dalala tab'iyya, the difference between dalala aqliya, and then mutabaqa, and then we have iltizamiyya and tadammuniyya. Then the author any goes on any to mention any about another type any of the categories any of this signification. So he said faslun fi mabahisil alfaz. Faslun fi mabahisil alfaz. So here it is important any for us any to find any the connection. It is important any for us any to find any the connection. What is any the connection? The connection any is dalala lafdhiyya. dalala lafziyah, al-wad'iyah. So when we are speaking about a formulative type of signification, and we have understood that we are focusing on the alfaz, on the verbal aspect of formulative signification, then the author now mention about verbal expression. Verbal expression, because since we say that the knowledge of Mantiq focuses on the verbal aspect of formulative signification, then now the author is going deeper into it. Since we have understood that it is important for us to understand the verbal aspect of this signification. So now he goes deeper into speaking about the expressions of the verbal aspect of this signification. So this is what he said, faslun fi mabahisil alfaz. So he's going to speak about this aspect. Type. So I mentioned here I said the Manatiq are always concerned on meanings, but it cannot be achieved if there are no words to describe them. What is the meaning here? When we look into the subject of al-Mantiq, this subject focuses on meanings of words. Meanings of words. It is not focused on learning about the pronunciation of those words, or the nature of those words, but it focuses upon the meaning behind those words. This is basically knowledge of Mantiq. So there is a clear difference between logic and grammar. What is the difference? The knowledge of grammar focuses on the word. Correct or not? Like in Arabic, we say, for example, Ra'aytu Muhammadan. Ra'aytu Muhammadan. Yani, I saw Muhammad. So, knowledge of grammar focuses on words. For example, Ra'aytu is fi'l and fa'il. Muhammadan maf'ul bihi. Alamatu maf'ul bihi mansub alamatu nasbihi. Fathatun zahiratun yani fi akhiri. So, it focuses on the state of that particular word in the sentence. If it is any maf'ul bihi, then it must be mansub, it must be in the accusative case. If it is fa'il, then it is in the nominative case. So there is a difference between knowledge of Mantiq and knowledge of grammar. Knowledge of grammar focuses on words, whereas knowledge of Mantiq focuses on the meanings of words. And for example, when we use verbal expression, we say Muhammadan. So knowledge of Mantiq focuses on the meaning of this one. What is a ta'rif? What is the definition of Muhammad? For example, tamam. What is the meaning of ra'aytu? Yani what is the meaning behind? Yani the sentence. When you say for example, Muhammadun Rasulullah, this is where the knowledge of Mantiq comes. When it comes to grammar, we say this subject and predicate. But knowledge of Mantiq and he speaks about, after he speaks about tasawwur, yani meaning, what is the meaning of Muhammad, what is the meaning of Rasul, what is the meaning of Allah, and then after that it comes into the tasdeeq, and it comes into the affirmation of this particular sentence. So the knowledge of Mantiq and it focuses on the meanings. It does not really focus on the words. But in order for us to get into the meaning, we got no choice except through those words, through looking at those words. So this is what basically it mentioned here. So I mentioned, but it cannot be achieved if there are no words to describe them. Yani if you are focusing on the meanings of words, you will not be able to understand those meanings unless you go through those words. So that is why words are important for us. Why? Because it leads us towards the meaning of those words, and this is the goal of the knowledge of Mantiq, to understand, because we are still in the chapter of tasawwur. We are still in the chapter of this tasawwur, which focuses on the meanings of words. They categorize it into two parts, namely the mufrad and the murakkab. So when we speak about verbal, formulative signification, now it is divided into two parts. Later, inshallah, I go back into the chart. It is divided into two parts, and we have what is called as mufrad and murakkab. Mufrad and is basically singular, something what you call it that is not what you call it built any upon. Later I'll give any some examples. And murakkab is something that is compound. Later we will give any some examples. It is an expression in which its part does not indicate upon part of its intended meaning, the intended any signification. And let me give you an example of when we say this is mufrad. Words sometimes, for example, any words like Zaid. This is mufrad. We have the letter Z-A-I-D. Z-A-I-D. Does the letter Z contribute any to the meaning any of Zaid? It does not any contribute to the meaning any of Zaid. Does the letter A contribute to the meaning any of Zaid? It does not any contribute any to the meaning any of Zaid. So when it does not any contribute the part any of this particular word, any meaning the letters, it does not any contribute any to the meaning any of that particular word. This is the meaning of mufrad. This is the meaning of mufrad. The definition any is this: the singular, it is the expression in which its part does not any indicate upon part of its intended meaning, the intended any signification. So it does not does not explain any part any of the meaning. So the word any Zaid is an example any of mufrad. And then we have any the murakkab, the compound. It is the expression in which its part any signifies part of its intended meaning, and its signification any is intended. For example, Zaid any is standing and is compound. So now you have any Zaid is standing, any subject and predicate. So the predicate explains any the subject. The predicate any explains any the subject. The subject tell us any about the focus any of the discussion. We are speaking any about a person any by the name any of Zaid. And when the predicate any comes and the predicate any explains any the subject. So we say part any of the sentence and explains any one another. So this is any the meaning any of compound. Just like for example in names we have Abdullah. Yani the meaning of abad any servant, Allah yani is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, servant any of Allah. So this is compound. This is an example any of compound. But it is different any when it comes into Zaid. Zaid is only any one word. Part any of the word any of Zaid does not explain any part of it. But when it comes to Abdullah, yani it explains. Abad any explains that when you find any the connection, when you link it any with Allah, then you understand that we are speaking about a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it has any its own meaning. This is mudaf and mudaf ilayh. It has any its own meaning, and what you call it, the one in the associated any has any its own any meaning. So this is any basically the difference any between what is called mufrad, the singular, and the compound. Yani before we go into that, let us take a look at this. Let us take a look at this chart. So here if you look here, on top there is a lafz. This is the verbal expression. Because again we are speaking about verbal and expression. This is the importance of the chapter of tasawwur, that we are speaking about a verbal form of expression. And it is divided into two parts, and we have the murakkab, the compound, and we have the mufrad. The scholars in your Mantiq, they are concerned with the mufrad, not more into the murakkab. So that is why you see there are so many errors here. So if you trace from on top, before the lafaz, we have the dalala, significations. So we have the three types, and we have dalala aqliya, dalala tab'iyya, dalala wad'iyya. So only wad'iyya is chosen by the manatiqah. When it comes to aqliya and tab'iyya, as what we mentioned, it is not any focus upon. And then under dalala wad'iyya, we have lafziyya and ghayru lafziyya. So the ghayru lafziyya, non-verbal is not the focus of discussion in Mantiq. When it comes to hand signals all this, it's not under the focus of the knowledge of Mantiq. So knowledge of Mantiq focuses on the lafz, on the verbal aspect of formulative signification. And then we have the three types of mutabaqa, then tadammuniyya, and iltizamiyya. Yani those kind of expression that we can understand the meaning, whether it is a wholesome any meaning, or partial any meaning, any or an associated any meaning. Then we come into here. Now it's under any the lafz, and it's divided into two parts. And we have any the murakkab and we have any the mufrad. So the murakkab any is not the focus any of discussion in Mantiq. So the focus of discussion any is in the mufrad. So what is any the meaning of mufrad? As what we mentioned the definition any before this, that it is any a word that part of it does not signify any part any of its meaning. So it is basically any a word any by itself, where part of it any does not explain part any of its meaning. Type just like any, for example, any we have any the word insan. This is mufrad. Insan. Asad. Asad any is lion. Insan, human. This is a singular. This is any singular. A singular word. So part any of it any does not signify part any of its meaning. And then any it is divided any into two parts. We have any the juz'i and we have any the kulli. The meaning any of kulli, it is universal, whereas juz'i is particular. So there are words any, for example, which carry the universal any meaning. For example, the word any insan, this is kulli. The word any insan, what is the meaning any of insan? Yani human beings. Under any human beings, there are many categories. Yani, for example, yani we have Zaid, we have Muhammad, we have Fatima. All these any are human beings. And we have male and we have female. We have men and we have woman. We have many any categories any of human beings. So this is a universal meaning. Yani universal any meaning. Under it, any there are what you call it, categories any that share a common yani thing any amongst them. So this is what we call as kulli. Whereas any juz'i, we are referring any to a particular thing. So let me give you a simple any example. For example, any we have any the word city in English, any for example city. So the word any city any is universal, meaning it can mean any city. Singapore any is a city, Kuala Lumpur is a city, London is a city, Texas is a city. What do you call it? Medan is a city, Jakarta is a city. So this is the meaning of universal. It can be applied into to many things. But when you say the city, now any you are specifying. So now this any becomes particular. Just like in Arabic, and when we have the alif lam, it becomes any takhsis. So there is a difference any between Madinatun and Al-Madinah. So for example, any if I say Zahabtu ilal Madinah, I went any to ilal Madinah, I use the alif lam. So now we can understand what we meant any is Al-Madinah is the Madinah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is Madinah. But in Arabic, and if I say Zahabtu ila Madinatin, yani I use nakira. That's why an-nakira yufidul al-umum. Yani in usul, when we have any nakira, yani it gives a universal any meaning. Yani it can mean any city. And we do not know, yani which city yani is this particular person yani referring to. So we have a partial any meaning and we have any universal any meaning. One is the thing any that the Manatiq is concerned. Are the scholars any of Mantiq any concerned any with a particular meaning or the universal any meaning? The answer is they are concerned with the universal any meaning. Yani words, verbal formulative significations that carry a universal any meaning. This is the thing any where the scholars any of Mantiq focuses any upon. So when it comes any to the particulars, it is something any that is fixed. So for example, in the Arabic language, anything any that goes back any to the ma'arif, like domir, the pronoun, ana, anta, nahnu, I, you, we, all these any carry particular meanings. When I say I, yani I mean myself. When I say you, yani this is any specifying. Likewise, any the person any by the name of Zaid, yani we are specifying any this particular person. So it carries any a particular meaning. But when it comes into universal, like the word any insan, like the word lion, this carry any universal universal any meaning. And this is any the point anywhere the scholars any Mantiq any focuses any upon. So when you look any at this chart, and you can see there are many types any below this word any kulli. Yani in the Arabic any we have, for example, the yellow on the at the end there, yani you see zatiyun, and then we have aradiyun. Let me explain any what is any the meaning of zatiyun and meaning of aradiyun. طيب, in Aqidah also any we study any about what is zat and what is arad. طيب, the thing any is this. Let me give you an example of what is zati and what is aradi. This is any very important. Important any in Mantiq, and in the chapter of Tasawwur, important in Aqidah also. When we speak any about the principle any of contingency any of the universe. Because our ulama in Aqidah also any they speak any about what is any the meaning any of al-jirm, zat, al-arad. So it is important any for us to come any to an understanding any of these words. So let me give you an example. Any this pen, this is zat, zatiyun. Yani zatiyun refers any to the essence. It refers any to the essence. And the meaning any of zat, ma yaqumu binafsihi. Yani it stand any on its own. What is the meaning any when we say any stand any on its own? Yani it takes up any space any in the sense that I cannot any put something any in its place. So this is what any we say any is stand any on its own. It does not any subsist any into anything. It does not any subsist any into anything. So we say this is an essence. Tamam? This is any an essence. But when comes any to the color, the color any of this pen that is blue in color, this is aradi. This is an accident. In English, and we translate as the accident. So zatiyun, and we translate as essence. So this pen is an essence. Tamam? And the color that subsists in this pen is arad. So the difference any between zat and arad is that zat any is stand any on its own, whereas arad any is subsists any within any the zat. It subsists any within any the entity. In English, any also any we call it essence as the entity. So the color any of this pen is an accident, arad. The height of this pen, the height any of this pen. Yani if I compare, for example, this pen any and this pen. So they have different dimension, different height, different dimension, different width. So the height, the width, it is arad. It subsists any within the entity. It subsists any within the entity. The movement any of this pen is also arad. It's an accident. So there is a difference any between zatiyun and aradiyun. So as you can see, we have any the word zatiyun under it, and we have any the genus, the noun, the category, and then any we have the fossil, the differentiating any factor. This is under essence, and under accident, and we have khasa, yani something any that is specific, and we have aradun am, yani something that is general or universal. This is any the topic any that we speak about inshallah ta'ala in the next week. And these 5 things, jins, noun, fasl, khas, am, this is what we call as kulliyatul khamsah. Kulliyatul khamsah, the 5 universal any concepts. So I mentioned any in the beginning any of the class of Mantiq 3 or 4 weeks any ago, that in the chapter of Tasawwur and we have the Mabadi and the Maqasid. In the chapter of Tasdiq also we have the Mabadi and the Maqasid. And the Mabadi, the principles any of the chapter of Tasawwur, is to understand kulliyatul khams. And if you go through any what I mentioned, yani it is to understand kulliyatul khams. And the Maqasid any of learning any Tasawwur is to understand ta'rifat, to understand any definitions. You cannot understand definitions unless any you understand kulliyatul khamsa. What is kulliyatul khamsa? Inshallah next week and we cover kulliyatul khamsa. And based any on this chart and this what any you see. So under zat you have 3, under arad and you have 2. So 3 plus 2 and you have 5. These are the 5 universal. These are the 5 universal any concept. So all this any comes any from kulli, and this comes any from mufrad, and it comes from lafz, and this is any the connection. So this graph any is important any for us any to memorize and picture any in our minds. طيب, so this any the meaning of mufrad. Then he mentioned وهو على قسمين أعني المفرد كلي أو جزئي حيث وجد فمفهم اشتراك الكلي كأسد وعكسه الجزئي. So he give an example يعني كأسد, يعني أسد يعني is كلي, يعني a lion. So under lion يعني there are many any types any of lion, female lion, male lions, and so on and so forth. So this one is an example any of universal. وعكسه الجزئي, the opposite any is the particular. Inshallah ta'ala, in next week, and I will go through basically this Juzi and Kulli again. Then inshallah we will enter into Kulliyatul Khams. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam.